So in 24, it's
Yes.
chapter 38, verse 24.
Okay, 38 verse 24.
Judah's daughter-in-law was guilty, but when he...
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Judah and Tamar, that's another one.
Yeah. Okay, as she was brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law, I am pregnant by the man who owns these, and then held up his sealing cord.
Yeah.
Why did Judas say, she is more righteous than I, since I wouldn't give her to my son Shelah?
Yeah. Well, because she didn't do she didn't do anything wrong.
But she laid there with her veil or whatever.
Well, I mean, he promised the third son. Remember, the two sons die,
Yeah.
and he's afraid,
Okay.
and he's like, "No, I'm not giving this lady my other son. They keep
Right.
dying. Why would I?" And so the third son comes of age, and Judah's like, "No, I'm not. I don't know what's going to happen to him.
Right.
Like, there's not a good pattern here, and that's fair,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
That's fair. There's
Yeah.
not a good pattern here.
And it was confusing reading through it too, because there's just so much happening.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an aside, but it tells you a little bit about maybe Judah, in the tribe of Judah, there might be some issues with marriage and fidelity and all that kind of thing. And then you look at King David and say, there you go. Right? So again, it kind of tells you a little bit, and there is gonna be a Tamar that's going to appear in the narrative of
Okay,
David,
yeah.
one of his daughters.
Okay.
Is named Tamar. So it's gonna happen again,
Right.
right? So yeah, here we see that Tamar. I mean, yeah, okay. So she tricks Judah when she realizes that Judah's not going to give her the third son. She tricks him into having sex with her, right? But she gets the promised descendant, right? That's the whole point, is that
Okay,
each
yeah.
one does not provide an heir,
Right.
right? And frankly, the second one, he dies because he doesn't want to provide an heir,
Right.
It's very explicit about that. It says that in the
That
text,
was
right?
That was and what's it called? Shua. No. Was it? Yeah, and Onan. Right?
Which I'm
That's
trying to.
at the beginning. Of
I can't think of the name off the top of my head. Yeah,
Okay, yeah. I was making sure it was the same
No. Yeah, I guess so. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, okay. Right. So yeah, that would be the one, right? And yeah, so yeah, right. So he doesn't, and then he dies, right?
Right.
But from Judah's perspective, it's kind of like, this is is she killing them? Who know what is going on here, right?
Yeah.
So she tricks him, but in tricking him, he also is kind of forced to come good on the promise that he made to her,
Right.
right? And gives a descendant to his first son,
Right.
who died. And now the whole thing, how it plays out, is kind of weird. You notice that all right, so Judah's wife has died,
Right.
and so he's not being unfaithful to her, but he's still going into a prostitute.
Right.
And she seems to have set herself up as like a cult prostitute.
Yeah.
Now this is actually, so this is kind of behind the scenes here. This is actually like a form of worship for the Canaanites. So like the
Okay.
goddess of heaven, Asherah, she's a fertility goddess.
Okay.
And one way to worship her is to have sex with a prostitute from the cult of Asherah.
Okay, yeah.
Right? It's kind of like an act of worship, and we see that and we think,
Right.
what
world?
it's weird, but the Canaanites, that's something they practiced.
Right.
Now, of course, the Israelites are not going to practice that,
Right.
or they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Right? But Judah seems to be practicing kind of this weird Canaanite religious practice.
Yeah.
And then he finds out that she, it was all a trick,
Right.
right? And that, that he says, yeah, she's more righteous than I was. I basically lied to her, and now she's got her heir. And
Now, and that's technically it's Er's son.
technically, it would be the initial son. Yeah, Ur's that's right. And then Onan, and then Shelah, right? So technically the son that Tamar and Judah have would be Ur's son.
Okay, yeah. That's weird.
Yeah, well, that's also drawn out in the Levitical law code. There's something that's actually the levirate marriage laws are actually you see that in the book of Ruth. And that's what's happening with Ruth, is she doesn't have an heir, and so that's how that all plays out. And what's interesting about the book of Ruth is that the book of Ruth is probably I do think, I mean, it takes place during the time of the Judges. I think that it was probably written in its final form, maybe during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, and might be a response to that.
Yeah.
Because Ezra and Nehemiah are getting rid of all the foreign women and children.
Okay, yeah.
It's like this cleansing, and in Ruth, the book of Ruth makes it very clear that Ruth is a Moabitess, and she goes with her mother-in-law Naomi back to Bethlehem, back to the people of Israel, and she is the one person throughout the entire book that follows the law better than anybody else.
Oh, really?
And the point is, I think that it's showing, look, this foreign woman that you're kind of maybe getting rid of actually has the potential to be a better Israelite than all of you.
Right. That's pretty cool.
So anyway, but that's kind of an aside here. But those laws that you'll see later on are, again, this is kind of Genesis talking about them in narrative form before they're actually presented by God. Yeah.
I got one more.
Yeah, please.
So with Joseph being a slave.
Yes.
Or sold into slavery.
Yeah.
39 verse 5.
39 verse 5.
When Potiphar put Joseph in charge of the whole household.
Yeah.
I guess in a way, even though he owned him, in a way he was doing good by him.
Yes.
Was God also blessing Potiphar, or was it just like all around?
I think
everyone thrives.
Well, by this point, so we're definitely kind of into the Joseph narrative at that point. We are, but so let's maybe next time. Why don't we go back next time and talk about? Let's start with Genesis, maybe 37 next time. Can we do that?
Yeah.
And then we'll keep moving on. But for here, what you'll see is the Joseph narrative is really Genesis 37 through 50.
Right.
And you see at the very end, as kind of a culmination of it all, Joseph tells his brothers, what you meant for evil, God meant for good.
Right.
And so you do, throughout the entire Joseph narrative, you do see God's hand in it all, and that he's overseeing the entire thing, right? And I think you see that here in the household of Potiphar also. He's overseeing the entire thing. Joseph always gets into a position of being the overseer, right. And we'll talk about his coat and all that next time. Let's do that. And you also see the dreams. So you see with the first two major narratives in Genesis. The creation narrative and then the Abraham-Sarah narrative, God actually approaches them physically. Right? He walks with Adam and Eve. He comes and speaks to Abraham face to face, it seems. And then with and he's also going by the name Yahweh.
Yeah.
Okay? And you see El a lot too. And then when you get to the Jacob and Joseph narratives, you see how does he approach them? How does he approach Jacob and Bethel? We talked about this a few weeks ago.
It comes from the ladder. Well, you said it was probably more of a dream.
Well, it is a dream. Yeah. It's like a ziggurat, but it's like a vision in the night, right? It's a dream, and here Joseph is having dreams.
You're right.
And so so it's kind of this weird. He approaches in the dream. When he's walking around as Yahweh, and they're really using the Yahweh name, he's much more imminent. He's there.
Yeah.
When they're talking about when they in the later part, in the latter half of Genesis with Jacob and Joseph, you see the word El a lot more. So it's not
Okay,
Yahweh or like the Lord you'll see translated. It's often he's referred to as God.
Right.
Okay. Rather than, let's say, the Lord God or Yahweh Elohim, he's just Elohim.
Yeah.
Right. And you even see it in a lot of their names, like Bethel, right?
Yeah,
House
that's
of
what I was
God.
thinking.
And so he's also a lot more. In the first part, he's a lot more imminent. He's there, and he's going by his name often. And the latter part with Jacob and Joseph, he's much more transcendent, and they're referring to him as God a lot more.
It's kind of like, since he's like with Adam and Eve and Abraham, he's kind of like physical.
Yeah.
That would be like his physical name, not like his physical name, but like
Yeah.
we all have a name.
Yeah.
And so we don't call each other human.
That's right.
And so when he's like a spiritual being, he's God.
Yeah, well, yeah. See, spiritual. Don't introduce that language because
Yeah.
that can be dangerous to kind of. But I think there's a distance aspect to it.
Yeah, yeah.
That's why
I know what you mean.
I want to use immanent, like he's here, and transcendent.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of the terms that people have used to describe this.
Okay.
And people have talked about this. People have written about this, and they've unfortunately written about it in a lot of negative ways. But I think it's a really important observation.
Right.
That he almost becomes increasingly transcendent and distant.
Right.
And then it sets you up for Exodus, where it begins. He hears his people crying out, and he remembers them.
Right.
Right. And so it is, and so you do see where Genesis kind of is going to begin with it does begin. Elohim creates heavens and the earth, and then you see Yahweh Elohim, right? And then at the very end, you see again kind of this transcendent God so God oversees all of creation. He does the creation. He speaks the creation. And then at the very end, he's still overseeing everything.
Right.
Right? Even something as specific as this guy Joseph and his brothers and his family and all that, and what happens in Egypt around it. So let's start with the Joseph narrative next time, and there's plenty to talk about there.
Oh yeah, I was reading through it a little bit.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Cool. All right. Very good. Well, thank you for your questions as always.
Oh yeah, thank you for answering.
Yeah, it's
Learned
always
a lot today.
Yeah, and it's really cool to just kind of talk through and think through this stuff.
Yeah.
It always kind of gives me a different perspective too when we talk through it.
Through
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
So, and thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
All right.